Going on, guys? Trey back again here, bringing another video. This one's going to be talking about the concept of killing characters in fiction. So either in a book or TV show, movie, video game, any kind of entertainment slash fiction stories. So when it comes down to it, I think that just recently, in the past maybe 10 or 20 years, as stories have begun to become darker and darker, we started to see a lot more different types of fiction incorporate the concept of killing off characters, which is something that's fairly new to a lot of different types of fiction. I mean, we used to have, you have the horror movies, and of course, in movies like that, obviously characters need to die. But we're starting to see a lot more different shows, and a lot more even in comic books and movies and everything, that a lot of the characters that are really important to the story and to the plot will die. I do, for those of you who don't subscribe or know me, I do reviews of The Walking Dead, and that, of course, that's like a horror comic book slash zombie apocalypse story on TV with the TV show. And we get to see, a lot of characters die. And as the story goes on, we're going to see a lot more characters die. The other day I was just watching, picked up a new show I'm going to try watching and maybe reviewing this summer called Game of Thrones. And in Game of Thrones, I was very surprised to watch, and anybody who's hasn't seen the first season yet, you should have by now, it's like a year later. But basically the main protagonist of the story, like the main guy in that story, gets killed before the end of the first season. And that's something that's very strange, because I think to myself, like 10 or 20 years ago, could you watch any story, or read any story, or watch any show where, as you're just getting into it, you see the main character die? It's very, very strange as times have gotten darker when it comes to storytelling and these kinds of things, that we get to see things like this start to happen, because it's kind of taboo. I mean, if you think back to any kind of Disney story, or the superhero story back 30, 40 years ago, this kind of stuff, you never see the main characters die, or almost never. I mean, it would be unacceptable if you had a movie where you had the main character just die right in the middle. There are exceptions with romance and different types of stories like this, but I think you guys understand where I'm going with this when we see things like this happen and what it does to the story. I think that character deaths can be a good thing, and they can be a bad thing, and it depends how the death is executed. It depends how it affects and impacts the story. If done right, it can do a lot of things positive for the story. It could send home a sense of danger in the story. It can make everything seem like it's very more realistic. That the other characters are in danger, and it kind of makes the story more intense, which is why it works really well for horror. Because when it comes to horror, like The Walking Dead, for example, with a zombie apocalypse, and you spend a lot of time with characters and then you see them die, it really brings home that sense of danger and makes every scene after that feel like it's really impactful, like it's really scary. And it makes it even more scary because you don't know what's going to happen to the other characters. Like, well, if they killed this person, like in Game of Thrones, which is not a horror story at all, it's mythology with sort of like the Dark Ages, with the kind of like the Lord of the Rings spin on it, with a few different mythological creatures like dragons and stuff like that. And you get to see the main protagonist die. It's very weird type of direction to take a story in when you see something like that happen. Because I mean, we're so used to, over time, every time you follow a main character or protagonist in a story, you never ever see that character die, and you always want to have that kind of happy ending type thing. It's very different to see that happen. The thing about it is, I think, though, is that they have to be very careful doing that, when they actually kill a character, because fans can be outraged, and fans can quit watching the show if it's one of their favorite characters that gets killed. I can see a lot of people just being like, this show sucks, or it's crap, or being angry if that type of thing happens, because you are taking the character out of the story completely. When you do that, when you kill a character, you're completely taking them out of that. Aside to that, though, on a positive note, is that everything that character did up to that point sort of has more value because you know that that's all they had. That's all the time they had. That's all they were going to do. And you know, it makes it feel like it was very valuable time, since they in the story lived a lifetime, which is kind of interesting too. So as I was saying before, I think there are positives and negatives to it. I think people just, or you know, writers just have to be careful when they do execute you know, a character death in a series. It's definitely a very interesting issue. You know, I can understand a lot of people would think that, you know, you shouldn't kill characters ever, like just never kill anybody, because it is really weird. It kind of throws your mind through a loop when you see that, since, you know, years ago we're so used to having like every story like that, especially when it comes to, like, you know, like I was talking about Game of Thrones with knights and stuff, and you know, the protagonist, the main character, you always think that they're going to, you know, overcome all the obstacles and rise to the occasion and, you know, save everybody and be the savior and this kind of stuff. It's very weird to follow a character and then have him just die at some point in the story. Very interesting stuff. Let me know what you guys think about character death in a series. If you think it's overall a good thing or overall a bad thing, I think overall it's a good thing, because it's different. You know, it's something different from what we're used to, because we're not used to that at all. And it definitely makes the you know, the time that you spent with the character seem more impactful, and it definitely makes the story seem more intriguing and shocking and dangerous. And when those characters get in dangerous situations, you take it more seriously than you would if you're like, you know, you're in a type of series where it's like, oh well, he's, you know, he's the main character, so they can't kill him. That'll never happen. You know, it totally throws that all through a loop, because then, well, they could kill him. You know, you just never really know what's going to happen, and it kind of keeps you, because that keeps you on the edge of your seat. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about character deaths in stories, and whether or not you support them and why. Later, guys. Peace.